Hello and welcome to the MOOC. Today we're going to think about middle ear disease, and I'm absolutely delighted I have a world specialist. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Ian Mackenzie, who's been a consultant otolaryngologist at the University of Liverpool for over 30 years. Ian, could you start by telling us something about your work for the WHO?
Oh, thanks. Well, for 10 years I was the head of the WHO Collaborating Centre for Prevention of Deafness, so I ran studies and work in developing countries looking at middle ear disease.
And what do we actually mean when we say middle ear disease? What does that encompass?
Well, middle ear disease with a variety of conditions, but usually it means something, either pus or fluid in the middle ear, stopping the movement of the ossicles, giving rise to a conductive deafness.
Okay.
Obviously, it can be very serious infection, or it can just be what we call in the trade a glue ear, where it's sort of thick mucus fluid in the middle ear.
And if this is something quite normal, why do we think it's a problem in low and middle income countries?
Well, it's always very difficult to quantify, but the sequelae of middle ear disease are very serious indeed. And brain abscess is probably the worst thing that can happen, which usually, because of the remoteness of it, the children usually die if they get a brain abscess following middle ear infection. In this country, in the United Kingdom, it was a problem before the introduction of antibiotics in the 30s, and then well recorded very high death rate from brain abscess from middle ear disease. But now, of course, you just see it in the poor countries.
Yeah. So obviously that's incredibly serious, and one of the problems is we don't know the scale of the problem. We know that in sub-Saharan Africa it's very common, but we don't know how large that problem is.
I think that the problem is larger than we think, but the studies that we've carried out from Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine indicate that there's 8% of children, school children, have evidence of middle ear disease, chronic suppurative otitis media, and these are studies that are published, and 8% seems to be about the right figure. Once again, it's also in adults is a very high figure as well, but 8% of children we would think have middle ear disease.
So it's interesting that because we usually think it's children who have middle ear disease, but in fact you're saying that adults have this. Is this particularly in low-income countries?
Well, there are more adults than we originally thought, but it is all in low-income countries. In this country, it's very rare to see someone with active middle ear disease, particularly having pus coming out of their ears, in adults. Still apparent in children in this country, but certainly I've seen very few adults in the last 20 years with middle ear effusion, middle ear discharge.
So is there something we can do to treat middle ear disease? If we catch it, can we actually treat it? Does it have long-term benefits?
The treatment is very, very effective, and the best treatment available at the moment is an antibiotic called ciprofloxacin, which is given as a drop in each ear that's affected. And with cleaning of the ears, this is very, very effective indeed. It can lead to lack of ear discharge, and in fact, the tympanic membrane, which is usually perforated in CSOM, will heal, which of course is the ultimately good result where you get hearing going back to normal. But drying up the ear also improves the hearing, although not back to normal levels. But we've shown quite clearly in studies in Kenya and in the Yemen that following treatment, stopping the pus in ears, the hearing improves.
Okay, so it's often called an index of poverty. Do you think that's an appropriate term to use in relation to middle ear disease?
Yes, absolutely. It's very much related to poverty, and certainly the work we've done shown that it's always in the poor parts of the countries involved where the disease is worse. Of course, I think it's the most likely reason, and I'm not proven that, is dirty water being around. Obviously, washing your face and things with dirty water, the infection can come from the dirty water, and that, I think, is the most common reason for the start of chronic suppurative otitis media.
And some people link middle ear disease to diet. Is there any evidence that that is important or not?
Well, I don't know quite anything. We've just finished a big study in Kenya, and there is an intimation from that, and I presented the results in Atlanta in America last year, that if the diet is short of zinc, they may have more chance of having chronic suppurative otitis media. That the study is still being analysed, results, but that was the one of the results we've already published, that there is a possibility, and therefore nutrition as a whole, particularly zinc, is maybe the underlying cause in the poor countries.
And do you think there's a real chance that a difference can be made for all those people who are affected with middle ear disease? Because in this country, we would expect it to be temporary, to be inconvenient perhaps, but to be treatable. But certainly in low middle income countries, it's potentially life-threatening. So can we do something about that?
We had a very good example recently. A medical officer from Yemen came across, and he was not aware of the problem of chronic submucosal media as a cause of deafness. And he, through his Ministry of Health, raised the money to treat every child who had CSOM in Yemen. And the results have been really quite spectacular, and that the rate of CSM has dropped dramatically in Yemen, and with just really money to give the right treatment, and apparently the hearing of the majority of the children has improved significantly.
So this is really about, first, education, and secondly about getting some resource behind that in order to make a difference.
Well, as you know, antibiotics are very expensive. We did do a study looking at antibiotics and antiseptics, but the antiseptics were not nearly as good as the antibiotics. But it is an expensive treatment, but very, very effective. And if you can stop the discharge and return the hearing to normal, you're doing a great service to the population.
Yeah. So that's our hope for the future, that we can actually get this spread of treatment to much wider populations with appropriate treatment. And do people understand the importance of clean ears, so to speak, of oral hygiene?
That's difficult. In most countries, the poor countries, discharging ears are regarded as being fairly normal. And certainly there's a lot of education to come to try and persuade parents, particularly, that it is important for the hearing point of the child that this should be treated. In fact, myself in Liverpool, I had when I first came to Liverpool all those years ago, I remember seeing a child where the mother was really anxious because the child had not got discharging ears. That has changed in Liverpool, but it's got to change throughout the world, that it's not a normal thing to have discharging ears.
No, but it's potentially so dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And these sequelae, I mean, the trouble is we don't know the figures, but I suspect that brain abscess is much more common than we know.
Yeah, clearly. Right, well, thank you very much, Ian. That's been extremely helpful. And thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed the MOOC today, and I hope you can really think about middle ear disease and what might be happening in your country.